This is my blueprint haul through one session of Arc Raiders. Not like one raid, that'd be perhaps the most unreal haul ever, but through one multi-hour session playing catch-up through a single day. Now, all of these feel like kind of surprising because some of them took me weeks to find in prior seasons of Arc. Some I don't know that I even had just yet, like the shotgun silencer, but the amount of pinks and epics to common greens in my crafting stations is kind of comical to see that sort of offset when normally it'd be the other way around. Like, the majority of my found blueprints right now consist of epic pinks or purples, however you describe them as, kind of jumping the gun and not really having any of the base sort of lower level blueprints compared to their higher level counterparts. So how is that? How did it become that easy to acquire these blueprints in a short span of time? Well, since being away for a week or so, I've been in this perpetual I feel behind schedule state. And yes, I absolutely am behind schedule when it comes to things like talking about the expedition and the reset. I mean, it's been a week at this point, so today's information may not be as widespread applicable to every single player out there, but regardless, I'd like to share things that help me out in the hopes that it can maybe help anyone out. Today, we're taking a look at one of the best ways and rather unsung ways that can help maximize your blueprint yield, and specifically for those things like higher tier attachments and other blueprints that you're trying to maybe recoup after the expedition, or if you simply just are looking for them for the first time. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you guys enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. And finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG and our co-branded line of flavors and items. Love the sherbet flavor we've got. It's currently in my cup actually as of recording this, but link down below if you're interested. For now, let's get into it. So let's start out at the beginning. Perhaps you're like me, when you first reset, you have nothing. You want to try and do a handful of things. Scrappy upgrades, bench upgrades, blueprints, maybe not in any particular order, but those are probably like the big ones you end up focusing on, right? Well, Scrappy can be annoying, but with focused effort, you can end up maxing him out in a shorter than you'd expect time frame. Couple of raids perhaps at that point, maybe like an hour or two of time. Benches, you're going to end up needing some firepower to get those to level 3 with all the various arc components you'll end up needing from the larger style of arcs. But if you're someone who wants to have the whole arsenal at your disposal for either PvE conquests, like fighting those bigger arc, for upgrades or crafting items that you want to just have your whole armory for PvP encounters to give you the best shot, well, obviously then your next quest would be blueprints. That'd be the next biggest thing on your mind. But again, if you're like me, you probably end up finding so many of these things you just absolutely do not care for. Light sticks, low tier magazines or grips, and so on. So when I was playing and got nothing but the highest tier of available attachments, I think the only epic level blueprints for attachments I'm still missing are the Stable Stock 3 and the Extended Barrel. So for me personally, it was kind of striking at the end of the day to be like, wow, I don't have much more to go after in terms of this sort of classification. No, I'll settle for a Silencer 1 for a little bit while I get Silencer 2, or anything like that. So what's the key? Well, it's map condition modifiers. And while that sounds pretty basic, hear me out. It would appear that the general loot pools of specific map conditions have been, for lack of a better term, buffed. Hurricane in particular, we talked about with the update that felt like it was the case, because of course, the marketed draw of the condition is the Hurricane Raider caches with upped loot pools, and of course, with a day one update with a brand new map condition, we've seen it a couple of times where things inadvertently are buffed. So for lack of a better term, it felt like the general loot pool was itself buffed at the same time. But if you searched around the world, you'd probably see that you had a couple of things that stood out to you. You know that you're probably pulling multiple higher tier yields, even in seemingly random areas. Like I got a Light Mag 3 blueprint, which is incredibly useful, in a random desk drawer far off in the outskirts of Spaceport. So like, better loot all around, right? But while the focus has been on Hurricane since the update, a quiet few sleepers with the same loot modifications include other weather conditions. Cold Snap has a great yield, Locked Gate has a great yield. The general loot, which is oftentimes not the headliner of the discussion for these modes, of course, much preferred over standard raids, is something that I think you should focus on almost as much as those other headliners. Like, if you think about these map conditions, the highlights include, for Night Raid, you can get the Tempest and Wolfpack. Those are the only times previously you'd be able to get that before the Hurricane map condition, and there's generally higher tier loot there. Locked Gate, usually it's the Bobcat's main spawn. Hidden Bunker, usually the Volcano's main spawn. Again, both those in the Hurricane Raider caches as well. Electromagnetic Storm, usually the fact you could find the Snaphook blueprint was the sort of lead off with that. And then Hurricane, that was the Hurricane Raider caches. But all these other general loot pools are also worth taking a look at now with this. Now that said, the general rules of loot still do apply, this being a bit of a refresher and a callback to our deeper breakdown of blueprints from last week. Had a blast with that video, so if you haven't seen it already, check it out. But it's also a lot more in depth on the categorization of loot distribution than we'll be going into with this one. This just surface level. But as you'd imagine, there's no way to guarantee a specific item to drop. Like, you can't just be like, hey, that container right there, you're gonna find a blueprint every single time. However, there are loot pools for types of containers that, in this case, blueprints belong to. For example, for the sake of what I was looting, talking about a lot of these attachments here at this, attachments are residential container specific in most cases. Angle grip 2, compensator 2, extended light mag 2, extended medium mag 2, extended shotgun mag 2, and so on and so forth. Those containers are like cabinets, desk drawers, closets, trash cans, wooden and office drawers, suitcases, fridges, things you'd see predominantly in marked residential areas. But in the discussion about the attachments of higher tiers in particular, those attachments have a maybe considered strange parameter. The level 3 version of those attachments are exclusive to set map conditions, not just container types, so kind of like a secondary barrier here. You need to loot those residential containers exclusively, but also in these map conditions. With the Shrouded Sky update, it was something that didn't seem to include the cold snap, but now does. So now all of these sort of elevated positions exist within these map modifiers. Now, that said, from my findings, what I got from the first day here at this of playing once back, notably absent from my findings were the Mark III augments and some standard weapons like the Anvil and the Venator and El Toro. Now, I will consciously say that I'm missing out on those augments, that I wasn't looting as many medical or security style containers in my run-throughs here at this one. So the chance of getting an attachment would be like 3 to 1, 5 to 1 probably in terms of how many residential containers I open versus like medical style containers or security style containers for those augments. Same with the weapons. Like the Venator is in the Hurricane map condition, but I've still yet to see in the Raider caches the El Toro or Anvil. Though admittedly, while we're talking more so about like higher tier attachments in this, I would be curious and I want to test this a bit further that it's going to take a little bit of time for, because I want to be able to put in like 200, 300, 400 specific containers and see that percentage yield in these map conditions to see what the yield is of augments in medical and security style, and also the standard Raider caches we see here at this one. I'd be curious what that ends up yielding, but I did feel like these tests, I did come across those medical areas for things like augments in hospital and other medical style things like defibs, and I wasn't finding much luck with that. So again, would love to probe deeper and have a bit more scientific like analytics behind that, but for the time being, it's just an odd hunch. Maybe I just got unlucky. But okay, you know where to look now at this point, but how can you do this as efficiently as possible? Well, of course, a lot of this comes down to RNG, so you can't quite predict exactly where you're going to find these blueprints and everything that you're looking, that yeah, you're in the right loot pool, but you can't be like, I'm gonna get it this raid or something like that. But to speed up the process a bit, perhaps it's one of those situations where you're just kind of fighting with another raider trying to get to a set of containers before they do. Whatever the case here, a lot of the times, if you want to be quick with it, you want to end up not spending a ton of time just looking for everything, there's a quick recognition trick that you can end up using. A lot of the times you'll notice some containers have some sort of set number of items in that container. Depending on what type, it can be anywhere from like 1 to 2 to 2 to 4, but sometimes you'll end up noticing, oh, well, I just looted this container right next to it. Why does this one have more items? Well, that's the RNG at play right there, because oftentimes containers will end up dropping you a bonus item of sorts, where if it's more than that, you have a chance of a bonus item, which is usually a higher tier item of some kind. Now, for things like residential items in particular here at this one, it could be as simple as a trinket, like a duck, something that's a lot more common there, upwards of things like a weapon, sometimes a Berletta, sometimes an El Toro, sometimes an Arpeggio, something more common like that. Though, of course, you can get things like Venators, upwards of Tempest, Volcanoes, and other high tier weapons, but like for more common yield that you'd probably see, it's one of those weapons that's more basic, but again, not ruling out that you can't get more. But for the sake of true efficiency, say you're running to a higher tier area and it's a bit more contested and you just want to clear a set of lockers, drawers, something like that before someone else may, you just want to know what's worth sticking around for. We can use that quick recognition of where there's normally 2 to 3 items. If there's a 4th or even a 5th, it's worth waiting out to see what those are, or if not, you can quickly skip on to the next container right next to you, so you can again kind of cover more ground in a lot quicker of a fashion. This applies to just about every container type, though the base number of items you'll see will vary. Like, of course, your sort of locker containers will have a smaller variance of 3 to 5 or maybe 6 items perhaps, versus like a Raider container, which can end up having, I think it's upwards of 10 or 11 off the top of my head, whereas others can end up having anywhere from like 6 to 8 items. So if you're in a pinch situation, you can use that again to quickly discern, hey, this one's worth sticking around for, or I can move on to the next container. But anyways, that's some of the stuff that I've been dealing with here the last couple of days when we take a look at trying to get some of these blueprints back. I'm still waiting on the Tempest, have not gotten lucky enough within the Hurricane map condition. Found a Bobcat a few times, found the Volcano a few times, but still waiting on my beloved Tempest. But of course, there's a lot of other things here that we have found that's been nice to recoup those so quickly, and It's been all because of the regular loot pools that, again, for lack of a better term, it's not necessarily because it is this, but like it's buffed compared to what you might think of when you think of these other map conditions out there. So those higher tier items and attachments, go check them out, grab them for yourself. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts down below. What blueprints do you have, or are you hoping to find? Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video or you found it at all insightful. And make sure to subscribe for more Arc Raiders and other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.